Welcome to Unraveled Mind. My name is Antonio and I'm here with you today to talk to you about learning and the mastery mindset. Stay tuned and let's play. This is my 7th video in my Life Mastery series. As always, links will be in the description for the full playlist. Now a lot of these concepts start to intermingle and refer back to each other, so if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and watch the older movies that I already released. Another thing I would like to just mention is that my main microphone is not operational today, so I'm using a backup microphone. I hope the sound works out well this time, and hopefully by the next time I will be able to go back. But let me know if maybe this one is better, if you like the other one better. Hopefully it will be back next time. We are always learning something because currently we are living in the information age and we are always bombarded with information. That doesn't mean we always want to go super deep and become super masterful at something. But we should always be conscious that there are things that are important to us and we should try to become clear on what those things are. And in those aspects of life, in those areas of life that are important to you, I would argue that you should be learning more about these areas, improving yourself in these areas, and making a consistent effort to become closer to a master in these areas, so that brings a positive effect on your life. And one thing that we need to realize about mastery is that regardless of whichever natural talent you might have, the only path to mastery is really time and focused practice. It will be grinding at times, and we should not assume we can master any subject in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. If it's something that's important to us and we really want to improve, we should increase our time frame to years, if not decades, to really get down this path of mastery very far. And a good example of this is really think of the example of the craftsmanship guilds that existed in European history, where one apprentice would go to practice with a master for 7, 10 or more years, and only then would he be able to go on his own and open his own workshop. And for this reason, it's very important to be mindful and conscious about the domains that we choose to master. Well, but still, nevertheless, it's one of the most rewarding things we can do, and not choosing a domain to master, which is something that some people tend to do, either consciously or unconsciously in our society. It does avoid some headaches in the short term, because this mastery process is not always easy and it's not always roses and peaches, but in the long term, they are completely foregoing this fulfillment that mastery brings and this sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. And one important thing for us to really clear is that most people expect that the path to mastery is at least linear, if not exponential. And this means that where the time that one invests equals to the improvement or the results that one gets. And something along the lines of what's on screen right now. And while time definitely plays an important role in getting the results, one should see it not as linear, but more as a step ladder. And these improvements they do come, and maybe even in exponential or even higher than a normal linear fashion, but they come in short bursts, and they are followed by increasingly long plateaus. And the thing is, culture tells us that these plateaus are bad, that if they exist, one must be doing something wrong, as it should not be a part of the process. There's always someone who's eager to sell us a pill, a process, a solution to really remove this plateau. And the truth is, this is why few people achieve mastery. Since they have this incorrect notion that learning and improvement should be linear, they will quit and they will get frustrated when they don't see the results coming, and they will never reach the mastery level. One not only has to be aware that these plateaus are natural and they will occur, the most important thing is that they have to learn to enjoy it. Because if they don't enjoy it, they are never going to be able to stick with it long enough without those external results to motivate you to continue on this path. And of course, vision is important. You have to have a vision of what you want and that end goal that motivates you and attracts you. But if you don't enjoy the processes, the plateaus will be increasingly frustrating. And instead of feeling like a part of the natural growth process, they will feel like torture. A torture that one goes through for achieving their final goal. And that's not sustainable. If you want a certain goal, but every moment until you achieve it, it's going to be feeling like torture, it's very likely that you're not going to be able to sustain it. I would like now to introduce you to the concept of the 4 archetypes that show up in the mastery process. And these ideas come from an amazing and small book called Mastery by George Leonard. And I highly recommend anyone interested in going a little bit deeper in this concept of mastery to check out this book. I will leave a link in the description somewhere. So what are these 4 archetypes? They are the Dabbler, the Obsessive, the Conformist, which in the book that I just mentioned, it's referred as the hack instead. I just prefer this term, the Conformist. And the last one is the Master. So let's explore what are the main characteristics of each of these archetypes and what we can learn from them. And if you are one of them, what maybe you can do about it if necessary. And let's start with the Dabbler. And I think most of us will be familiar with this one. The Dabbler is someone who is very excited at the start of a new project. He appears committed and eager and ready to start. And he enjoys the fast improvements he sees at the start, and that allows him to remain engaged and motivated. Eventually, after those initial rapid gains, he reaches the first plateau, as in the model that I just mentioned. And at that point, he realizes that this path will require more dedication and it will be much harder than he had anticipated, leading him to abandon this project and seek the new shiny thing. He does this in every new project he starts, and he leaves a trail of uncompleted and unfinished projects behind him, never gaining enough mastery in any area, because he's always jumping from one thing to the next. And this situation can be undesirable because, as I mentioned before, there is no getting away from the time required to master any particular skill. And by dabbling and not committing to anything, we are failing to take the opportunity to develop one skill, beyond, of course, that initial beginner level. A dabbler, if not careful, he really can spend a good portion of his life jumping from one thing to the other, never specializing in anything. It can become, of course, at best, a jack of all trades, master of none, but at worst, he really fails to develop any skill enough to be valuable to the society, of course, because we need to work and we need to do something in order to survive. And if you don't develop any valuable skill, you might really be able to sustain yourself and to be independent. And this dabbling mentality is quite common for people in society, especially now, since there's so much choice and it's normal for people to have multiple interests, and so it's more difficult for people to decide on one particular area to master because there's so much choice and there's so much interests that people have. And it's also true that many people don't receive enough help from their family, from school, from society, on how to figure out what you want to choose and what you want to do with your life. What path do you want to be? So a lot of people ask you when you're growing up, so hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? But that's it. And of course, kids are always changing from one thing to the next. or most people are. I know a few children that were from the beginning always sticking to one thing, and I really envy these people because I was not one of them. I was always saying, I want to be a chef, I want to be a footballer, I want to be something completely different, and it was always changing. So I never was helped, other than being asked this question, I was never really helped on how do I figure out what do I want to do, and just people assumed you can do that by yourself. And yeah, without that help, it can be overwhelming to make this choice, and you can be stuck in indecision. One particular note that I would like to make right now is that dabbling is not necessarily bad. It is part of the exploration process, so you always have to sample a few interests before feeling confident that this is what you want to do. If you never tried it before, it's hard for you to be deciding that this is what I want to do with my life. Dabbling is of course something that should, and to be honest, is encouraged in children and even in teenagers, that they should try different things. They should try different sports, try different activities, try learning a music instrument, try learning another music instrument. And that's important to allow them to get exposure to a wide variety of different areas. But if you are past childhood and you still spend all your time dabbling from one thing to the other, I would recommend you to ask yourself, what is preventing you from embracing the mastery path? Is it a fear of commitment you might have? Is it a fear of regret? What would allow you to make the decision to stick to the mastery path on a particular skill in a particular area? And after the dabbler comes the obsessive. And the obsessive has but one thing in mind. He wants to master the skill or to complete the project as fast as possible. He goes all out, getting the best resources, getting the best people and coaches to help him, and he puts way over 8 hours a day in trying to achieve mastery or achieving this or getting this project completed. And he makes incredible progress at first with all this commitment, with all these resources that he brings to the table. And he's even able to brute force his way through the first few plateaus. He doesn't really get stuck there very much because he's really able to brute force his way through it. But as the plateaus get wider and they take longer to overcome, the obsessive person denies this reality and tries to put in more effort. It goes to try even harder. So instead of 10 hours, I'm going to put 16 hours. I'm going to put 20 hours. I'm going to work on the weekends. And it really goes and tries really hard to bust through. But as the plateaus get wider and wider, this gets increasingly difficult. And it completely lives with the illusion of the linear learning curve. So that the more time you spend on something, the more effort you spend on something, the more results and improvements, which is generally true, but not, of course, in a linear fashion. So at this point, he starts questioning everything when he stops seeing the progress that he was expecting. He questions the team he's working with, he questions the system he's using, he questions the processes that are implemented, he questions himself, and he's always looking for a way out that he might be missing. Unfortunately, eventually, he will burn out. Its unsustainable pace catches up with the obsessive person, and he has to abandon the process and the path, and he leaves defeated and spent. But what can we learn from the obsessive? And first, his problem is definitely not commitment. No one can blame him for not giving 100%. The obsessive fails to understand the concept of the learning curve I mentioned earlier, that it's stepped instead of linear. He rejects this notion, and therefore it tries to race to the end goal, not caring about balance and not caring about the process, because he just wants to brute force his way through it, and he just tries to hold his breath for the entire duration, trying to run as fast as he can. His obsession with the results led to unrealistic targets and, of course, a lack of patience. He wanted the goal so much that he forgot to enjoy the process. Mastery is not a destination, it is a road. No matter how much a certain goal will improve your life after you achieve it, If every moment you are working towards it, you are suffering, you are torturing yourself, not improving your life. And that's the thing. You have a treasure that will make you the rich man, and it's lying on the bottom of a lake. No matter how much that money will improve your life, if you try to dive just by holding your breath without any plan, you are never gonna make it. And if you find yourself falling into the obsessive trap from time to time, just ask yourself, why am I in such a rush to achieve this? Would it still be worth if it took 5 years, 10 years? How am I sabotaging myself, and do I need to address that? And finally, a question everyone should be asking is, how can I make this process more enjoyable? Next, we go to the conformist. The conformist accepts that learning something takes time and is committed to the long term. So, unlike the obsessive, he's really willing to give it the time it needs. He, of course, goes at a sustainable pace and surpasses the first few plateaus without losing motivation. He becomes good or even great at a particular skill he's mastering and is recognized for it. People start acknowledging his skills, even though he's aware he's not at the master level yet. With time, his passion starts to dwindle. The motivation and fire that has kept him going through the arduous practices starts to disappear. The conformist starts questioning whether going any further is worth it. The reality is, he's comfortable at the current level, he's satisfied with what he can do. Eventually, his skills stagnate and he remains at whichever plateau he managed to reach, with only minimal improvements after. So, what can we learn from the conformist? And there is a quote that I think is very appropriate here, which is, "The good is the enemy of great." And that is something most of us fall prey to in one way or the other. After all, you cannot be a master in everything you do. Sometimes you are truly satisfied and at peace with your current level, and there is no need to progress further. I agree, life requires us to become proficient in a number of skills, but that doesn't mean we can truly master them all. Also, it is normal that with time our priorities changes. What we once valued highly is now taking second place to new priorities, maybe such as family, other responsibilities you now have, and maybe that hobby that really you were passionate about, or that sport that you were really committed to and had success in the past, maybe now that goes to the second plan. But there is one danger, however, and that danger is we become conformists in all areas of our life. We completely abandon the mastery path altogether. It is okay, as I said, to conform in certain areas, but if we don't keep some mastery process, if we don't continue to grow, that feeling of stagnation will grow. That feeling will in turn become dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction will in turn become sorrow. Sorrow will turn into regret and guilt. No one is ever regretful if he abandoned one mastery path for another. Only those that abandon a mastery path and never restart it or never start a new one, those are the people that end up wondering, what if I had done differently? What if I had not given up that opportunity or that project? And really what I'm claiming here is, and you can believe it or not, is that anyone who abandons something but is still committed to something new will never be regretful of that decision. Of course, if you made a conscious decision at the time to, I will stop this and start this new thing, then you will never regret it, as long as you stay committed. Because if you find yourself abandoning this path and just wondering then, how much more could I have grown if I was still focusing on this? This is only something that you start to wonder when you stop growing. As long as you're growing in another area, that will continue to satisfy that need that human beings have to continue to grow as human beings. And if you find yourself conforming to something, ask yourself the following. Is this still important to me? Am I happy or am I just comfortable? If my life doesn't change anymore, will I be satisfied? How do I want to continue growing as a human being? Am I afraid to let go of what I achieved to keep growing? And finally, we get to the master. And is someone who is completely aware and at peace with the learning curve and the existence of these plateaus. He knows where he currently is, and he knows that with persistent, deliberate focus and practice, he is undoubtedly going to improve, no matter in which plateau he finds himself with. He always seeks to find the right balance, and that means that at times he pushes a little bit harder and goes a little bit faster, and sometimes he slows down and avoids getting burnt out. And he's committed and has the patience and persistence necessary to conquer any plateaus and any temporary setbacks that come his way. He knows that the only way to stop improving is to give up. And that even during the longest plateaus, where there doesn't seem to be any improvement, at least externally, you don't see your skills improving, he knows that he's growing internally and he's getting prepared for that next jump. He always challenges what he already learned and is not becoming attached to any particular way of doing things. Whatever has worked for him in the past doesn't mean that he's attached to it, and he's always willing to let go of what he has achieved and his way of doing things in pursuit of unlocking that next level. He seeks perfection, but he's not a perfectionist. There is a lot all of us can learn from the master, but the master is easy to admire after multiple years on his journey. These are the people that society labels as geniuses and overnight successes. But if we look deeper, that overnight success, of course, took years, if not decades, to unfold. We should learn to recognize and admire a mastery mindset, even before significant success is achieved. If one is walking the right road, he is surely going to reach the right destination. As I mentioned, of course, before, it's okay not to be a master in everything you engage with in life. The mastery path requires a different level of commitment and priority that wouldn't work if it was spread around multiple areas. However, we can always learn from the mastery mindset, and even when we know we are learning a new skill only temporarily or only to a certain level, we should always strive to be more like the master and have more the master's mindset as opposed to the Dabbler or the Obsessive. And finally, before I wrap up, I want to once again mention that it's okay to show up as any of these archetypes at any time. Don't judge yourself for dabbling at times or for being obsessive. We all have more interests that we have time to fully master, so dabbling allows us to experience and engage with these interests at a more superficial level, which can be okay, of course. Sometimes, due to external pressures at work, we do need to master a new skill fast. Or if not master, we need to learn a new skill fast. So it's okay to take some characteristics of the obsessive to try to get us off to a fast start and allows us to meet certain deadlines. With this video, I don't want to judge any of you watching, and I sincerely hope you don't judge yourselves either. There is always much we can learn and do differently, and what is most important is that we choose consciously how we show up and engage in our lives. Maybe you see yourself prioritizing work less and starting to stagnate, but you just started a new family and mastering parenting and being a kick-ass parent is a whole new project in itself, so you should not blame yourself for it. Remember what I said in the Conformist session, as long as you are in the mastery path in some area of your life, it will bring you growth, and with the growth you will feel satisfaction, accomplishment and pleasure. Never stop growing as a human being, that's my advice to you. And my sincere wish as a coach to any of you who might be listening. And of course now, just mentioning with this very scientific graph distribution, we can all show as these various archetypes, but you should always try to have something you are seeing from the lenses of the master. And with that, I wrap up this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, I kindly ask you to like this video and share it with a friend. I'm sure if you're interested in this video, you have friends who might be interested in this video too, so do me a favor, introduce him to me. And another thing, we are nearing the end of this Life Mastery series. I currently only have one more video planned, which is about health, and should be coming out next. And soon. As you can see, these concepts really start to intermingle amongst themselves, and so feel free to revisit, or if you haven't, rewatched the videos that I already released. So, have a great day, and until next time.